Hello, and welcome back to PJ Maybe's YouTube channel. Apology for that wee glitch. I'm still getting used to StreamYards. Today we're going to talk about The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1951 classic. Not the remake, the original classic. Klaatu Barata Nikto. It's something we've seen in a lot. It's a well-known phrase, and it comes from this movie. The movie is the premise of an alien lands and to tell the people of Earth that they must live peacefully or be destroyed as they are a danger to other planets. This, unlike other movies of the time, was not so much a pacifist movie, because a lot of the movies of the time it was alien invaders which represented the Red Menace, the communism and such like. This one was more of a pacifist look at it. And considering it was an alien movie, slightly different at the time again, only two people died in this, which considering all the movies around the time you got them and such like you had or monster movies, alien movies, you always had a lot of destruction and death and plague, things happening. This one was quite unusual because it had a peaceful message at the back of it. It was based around the Cold War, and it's become iconic. 70 years on, it's still a few people's favourite movie, and I can understand why. We'll look at the movie. The movie is the screenplay was by Edmund H. North, and it was based on a story, Farewell to the Master, by Harry Bates. The difference between the original story and this one is Gort was actually the original story. It was based on the robot, and it wasn't Gort, it was Gnut, and he was the master. Klaatu was merely a series of doubles or clones that died after a short time. Obviously, for the movie, they wanted something more, more of a movie star to do it. Michael Rennie plays Klaatu. This part was originally offered to Spencer Tracy, who was keen and eager to play the role, but the executives at the time thought people wouldn't buy him as an alien because he was such a well-known actor. Michael Rennie had a 7-year deal with the what's the word with the studios at the time, and he had been leading. He'd never had a leading role, and this was his first and only leading role. And he got it because he wasn't as a well-known actor, and people would believe that he was an alien. That people wouldn't recognise. So I think he played it really well, and I must admit, the whole premise of the story, it isn't a fast action. It's a slow of Klaatu getting to know the people of Earth and understanding why they couldn't get the information. And it doesn't show the army in a good light. And the nice thing about this was the army, after reading the script, didn't want to be involved. So they asked in National Guard, and the National Guard, quite happy that the army gets shown up in a bad light, gave their services. So wee bit of rivalry at the time between the National Guard and the army, which I thought was quite nice, quite an unusual concept. But Michael Rennie plays Klaatu very well. He seems quite distant a lot of the time, which to me actually was a good part of it, because he didn't seem like, as a lot of movies now where the alien tries to pretend it's either silly, like the John Lithgow and Third Rock from the Sun, or it's a constantly forgetting I better put my mic down. I realised, pardon me if you couldn't hear that, just realised my mic wasn't down. That's what happens when I'm working on my Todd. I basically forget things and I do ramble. So we'll go back to that. So Michael Rennie basically plays it. It's not a silly part, so he doesn't actually get all the bits wrong like the John Lithgow character. I know that was a comedy, Third Rock from the Sun, whereas they didn't understand it, and he didn't play it so alien that you're sitting there wondering, why did people not guess that he was meant to be the one they were all looking for, considering they were always constantly searching for him throughout the movie. He was normal enough that people didn't automatically assume, oh, he must be the alien because he's acting weird. The next main part was Patricia Neal. She played Helen Benson. She's someone you've seen in a few things. She's been in Little House on the Prairie and a few things throughout the season. So she's always had a good role. She even it was in Kung Fu with David Carradine. So she has had parts throughout her career that in memorable TV shows. In this one, she plays the love interest, which is technically not true because she's not the love interest of Klaatu. She's the love interest of Tom Stevens, and we'll get on to him in shortly. But Patricia Neal actually plays Helen quite well. She's the widowed wife of a veteran, and her son basically shows Klaatu around Washington and just tells him about things that's happening and stuff like that. So he is the vehicle for how Klaatu learns about things, as well as the people in the lodging house where he stays. Some silly things in it about they've learned about the languages of Earth and the politics of Earth, but they didn't really understand the money of Earth, considering they've see these words, it's terrible. Intercepted the radio broadcast and the TV broadcast, and they didn't understand money. To me, was a wee bit silly. But with the diamonds, they would have known, even at the time with the broadcasts, that money was used and what type of money it was, because even I know what type of money was used in America at the time and how coins and a dime and a cent and such like in dollars. It just seemed a wee bit silly that he knew the languages and he knew a lot of the customs, he knew the political things, but they didn't know the basics of money. But so via Helen and her son Bobby, played by Billy Gray, he gets a knowledge of an understanding of the people of Earth. Helen's love interest in it is a Tom Stevens, played by Hugh Malone, and he actually plays it quite well, because at the beginning you think he's a nice guy, she's in love with him, he's happy, obviously happy to take on someone else's son, because you know she's widowed and the son is basically lost his father during the Second World War. And there's wee bits that niggle to me at certain parts, like for instance when he's going to take her away for the day and she says, oh well, I couldn't get anybody to look after Bobby, could we take him with her? And he sort of went, some way I could understand that he was wanting to be alone with her, but other ways I thought he's just trying to get rid of the son, he can't be bothered with him. And then obviously Mr. Carpenter, or Klaatu, steps in and says he'll look after him while they're away. So initially Tom seems a nice guy, and then he seems to get a wee bit jealous of Klaatu, or Mr. Carpenter as he's known, because he seems to be taking an interest in the two of them, and he gets a wee bit jealous. Later on, when he finds out that he's probably he is the spaceman everybody's looking for, he basically turns into a money grabber. Look at me, I'm going to be a big man. You'll like me more when you see how my name in all the papers, and you'll be marrying a big shot. And she turns around and says, I'll not be marrying anybody. So it basically, she sees what type of man he is, and she leaves him because he's more interested in fame and money than actually just helping her to make sure nothing happens to Mr. Carpenter. The other two main parts in this is Sam Jaffe. He played Professor Jacob Barnhold. And he does play the nutty professor type very well. He had around about the same time played an Einstein type character and other things, but this was his last movie in the 50s due to the anti-communist witch hunt. Basically, he was singled out because they thought he was a communist during the McCarthy era, and he was blackballed. So it was only afterwards he basically started getting jobs back. But this was his last movie, and the only reason he got it is because the director insisted he got it because he wanted him for the part, which I thought just goes to show the times of witch hunts in Hollywood. Good actors were basically tarred with a brush. That made zero difference. Politics shouldn't make any difference when with an actor, as long as they're not doing something illegal. Doesn't matter what their politics are. If they're a good enough actor for the role, they should get it. And the other notable person was Locke Martin, who played Gort. Locke Martin was a doorman of the Chinese theatre in New York, in Hollywood, and he was cast merely because of his height. He was almost 7 foot tall. However, he wasn't a physically strong man, and he couldn't actually carry Patricia Neal or Michael Rennie. And so the parts where he's carrying her, like for instance, he's carrying Helen, it's either you see the strings holding Helen up, the wires holding her up so he could carry her, or it's a dummy, a lightweight dummy so he can carry her. And it's the same lightweight dummy they use for when he's carrying Klaatu after he gets shot. And spoilers, he gets shot. But it's a 70-year-old movie, so if you've never watched the movie, there's not a lot I can actually say. So there's some nice wee aspects of this movie. Like, for instance, Spencer Tracy was first marked to be Klaatu. But the one to play the Helen Benson part was initially Anne Baxter. Anne Baxter she'd played in some movies like The Ten Commandments. She played in Batman 66, believe it or not. She played Olga, Queen of the Cossacks. She's been in a load of things. Check out her IMDb. This is amazing, the type of things she's been in. But she couldn't take the part. So Patricia Neal got it. And Patricia Neal thought it was just another B-type movie. She didn't think it would be such a well-made movie, such an important movie, and turn into such a classic, iconic movie. She just thought it was just another one of the B-type monster space movies that was getting made around about the time. And it's the same as Gort. Although Locke Martin was cast, they originally wanted Jack Palance in it. And Jack Palance was a very well-known actor at the time. He's been in a load of westerns, even starred in later on with Billy Crystal, and I can't even remember the name of the movie. It just goes to show the names of the movies just disappeared. And other aspects of the movie as well, within the TV or the newspapers and the TV reporters, they actually got TV reporters and radio hosts to actually do cameos to give it an air of authenticity. So a lot of the news reports were done by actual news reporters, and they had other like radio presenters would be around asking people questions with a mic for a radio station to give it a wee bit more authentic. And I thought that was quite a good way of doing it. It's like they did with Independence Day. They actually brought in some people who were known and they had them. Doctor Who's done it with some BBC casters just to actually give it a wee bit more air of authenticity. And at the time, you're talking about 70 years ago, they were quite happy to do it. Even the fact is the newspapers, they would mention things like the man from Mars or the spaceman. But the fact that they called him the man from Mars, and some of the information that Klaatu gives to the scientists or the Secretary of State for the United States, when he was asked how far he travelled, he says 250 million miles. We are neighbours, as you would sort of. And considering the range they're talking about, that's between Mars and Jupiter. So in effect, they're saying he's probably from Mars. And considering it's only been the politician or the scientist that got told that, the newspapers seem to pick up the fact that he's a man from Mars. There is a couple of glitches in the matrix of the movie, as it were. Like, for instance, some of the news reports have Klaatu and Gort standing in a way that you only see at the end of the movie, because when you first see Klaatu coming out of the spaceship, he comes out on his own and then he gets shot. Some people say he got shot once, but to me, it looks like the two people in the tank shoot him, both of them, because the thing gets shot out of his hand, plus he gets wounded in the left shoulder, because you see the blood stain, and the thing he had in his hand, they thought it was a weapon that gets shot out. I thought that was quite good, because I've seen some of the reports are saying how it was a bit of a glitch because one guy shot and it seemed to cause two things to happen, or else it was a ricochet from the damage. But to me, it looked like both guys shot, and it's just because you hear one gunshot, I suppose that's where it's gone. And the way they actually tell the story through the eyes of Klaatu, some of the things you notice when the glitches happen are not really that important. Like, for instance, when he stops the Earth, as in stops all electronic devices on Earth, you see a police officer actually try to start his bike and it won't start, or you see a farmer try to start his tractor. But when they're showing you that, the police officer, you see a light in the back on one of the traffic lights flashing. So if all the electronic devices were switched off, that wouldn't happen. You see, I think it's London, and all the cars are stopped. However, the lights seem to be on one of the cinema boards. It's either that or else it's just big white painted signs, and it just looks as if it's the electronic ones that you see nowadays. So I could be wrong in that respect. But even if all electronic devices were stopped, things like diesel cars and diesel bikes wouldn't be stopped, because they don't use, I suppose they do use electricity because the diesel engine is still running, using a battery to run, but everything seems to stop. Yeah, the clockworks on a watch don't seem to stop. And even when the army are telling you that all communications have been interrupted due to this electronics because the phones don't work and things like that, people come in and tell them that certain things are still flying, like planes are still flying and hospitals are still working. Well, how would they know planes are flying unless they got communication to tell them that? Because unless a plane crashed outside, how would they know? Because they can't get communications. They can't do radio waves, they can't do telephones. How else would they know? So wee glitches appear in the movie if you look at them. But all in all, the movie is constructed in such a way it's a slow-paced story. There's no fast action. There's a couple of wee bits here and there, but it is done in such a way that you can take your time and watch it. There is nothing that can be distracting that can take you out of it. Like, for instance, suddenly machine guns going and bombs, which I was expecting a bit more. Like when the two guys who shot Klaatu when he came out of the ship and took the thing out they thought was a weapon, they shot. However, Gort comes out and starts destroying all the weapons and stuff like that, and nobody anywhere nearby who still had their weapons tried to fire a shot. I thought that was weird. And then also you've got this robot that can destroy all these weapons, but they go up and try and use blowtorches on them. So wouldn't Gort react to that? Yes, I know they can't damage him, but he never reacted to it. So they were trying to break into the ship. They were trying to actually damage him, and he let them. And there's also the aspect of it that Klaatu says that they have built the police force of the robots, and they have got the ultimate power, so they can't be countered. Yet at the beginning, when Gort comes out and starts destroying all the weapons, it's Klaatu who actually tells him to stop. So if he can't counter them, how did they counter them? These silly things, they're not major for the plot. They don't ruin the story. It's just wee niggly parts that I've noticed. All in all, 70 years on, the day the Earth stood still stands the test of time. If you look at the newer version, the day the Earth stood still, it is pants, let's put it that way. It is nowhere near as good as the classic. Yes, a lot of people don't like movies if they're in black and white. Big deal. A good story's a good story, no matter how old it is. And modernising the day the Earth stood still, they didn't add to it. They actually took away from it because it was a story about you want to ruin your planet, not a problem. But if you take that violence out into space, your planet will disappear. And it's a good story. It's a story not telling you have to live the way we are or else. It's a story saying you can live the way you want. However, as soon as you go out there and you do anything that interrupts the peace of the rest of the galaxy, then your planet will pay for it. So yes, you can get someone who's a bit of an, it'd be like the nuclear. I suppose it's a play on the nuclear weapons. Like, for instance, it's a mutually agreed destruction pact. So they know fine well if they fire their bombs, you're going to fire yours back, and it will destroy all life on Earth. And considering the amount of nuclear weapons that are around, even then, there was enough weapons to destroy the Earth 2 or 3 times over. Well, maybe not at the time, but nowadays there's enough atomic weapons to destroy the Earth 3 times, 4 times over. So why would anybody want to use nuclear weapons? Yet they still keep creating them, and they're worried that some of these terrorist organizations get them. Today, the day the Earth stood still is quite an apt one for that, because what they're saying is if you do something that endangers the greater universe, then your whole planet goes. But then that leaves it open for some psychopath to actually do something that gets the planet destroyed. And in 2021, might not be a bad thing. Maybe we need Gort and his Ike to come and actually tell us how to actually survive and make sure we do. But that's just me. So, The Day the Earth Stood Still, a perfect classic movie of its time, but still it resonates today. It's a movie I would recommend seeing. 70 years old and still perfect. And I'm going to actually finish there. I was going to do season 2 of Blake 7, and then I realised Blake 7 doesn't need just a half hour just discussing it. Blake 7 needs a stream of its own. So I will be looking at starting a Blake 7 stream. And me just telling you about it, probably not working. So I may actually look for a co-host to get a discussion on, maybe even a panel to get a discussion on Blake 7 and such an iconic TV show, British TV show. Not that I'm saying American TV shows are bad, but British ones are better. Sorry, guys. And I am aware, I noticed it last night when I was on a stream, that sometimes my accent gets quite strong, and I do apologise. So if you've got any comments about words I used or the day the earth stood still, please leave them in the comments below. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you've not, because I'm aiming to hit 100. 100's my goal. And once I've hit 100, I'm going to do a giveaway of a Doctor Who. And my 100th subscriber stream is going to be a stream on the talents of Wen Chiang. And I'm going to do, when I hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway of the talents of Wen Chiang. So, subscribe, like, comment, share. Hit anything that hits the algorithm to make sure it's out there. And remember, I'm not old. I'm classic. PJ may be out.